Hello, good morning. My name is Jim Zabricki, and I'm a learning solution specialist at Macmillan Learning. And I have taught at both online and face-to-face classes, both at the community college and the university level. Today, I'd like to talk to you about Achieve and how it can help as you're transitioning your course online. But before we get started, I want to share a metaphor with you that was kind of shared with me recently that I thought is really helpful and it makes a whole lot more sense of the situation. Okay. So I don't know if you're like me, but I am a terrible flyer. I know flying is safe. I know that aerodynamics behind flying, and I usually this is absolutely true. I usually do a Google check just to see where the turbulence is wherever I'm flying to. And I just get so much anxiety every time I fly because I hate turbulence. No matter how many times I hear the phrase, it's like the bumps on the road, it doesn't reassure me because the chances of a sinkhole that's going to open up and my car falls down, falls into that hole, are slim to none. But I will say this, every time my anxiety goes down a lot, it's usually due to the pilot or co-pilot coming on the intercom in advance and says, hey, the flight's going to be a little bit bumpy, expect some bumps now, but we're going to try to climb out of this and find some smoother air. I'm sure the pilot hates turbulence as much as I do, but by the pilot saying that, it makes me feel like there was an expectation set and that we're all in this together and I can prepare myself mentally for that road ahead. That's how I feel about the daunting task you and me have with our students as we move our face-to-face classes to a fully online experience. There's no way around it being different. And the pathway to the end of the quarter or the semester may be bumpy, but if we set the proper expectations, we're going to get through this together. And the cool thing is that you can think of Macmillan as your flight crew. We're here to help and we're here for your safety. Unfortunately, because this webinar is just such a short call, a puddle jumper, if you will, we won't be serving refreshments. That's all on you. So that being said, let's take a look. Let's take a look at today's flight plan. So the plan of our plan of attack for this call is that first off, I'm going to show you some basic functionality in your Achieve course. Some things to take a look at as you're walking through this. Then after we get to cruising altitude, I want to show you two assignments that are going to be in your course. You're going to have a learning curve assignment, and then you're going to have either a homework assignment or some sort of summative quiz. Okay. These two things are out of the box assignments that you can assign today to your students. After we go through learning curve and the summative quiz or homework, we're going to start our initial descent, and now we're going to talk about how do we make a quiz or an exam inside the Achieve system. And then as we prepare for landing, I'm going to give you some things to think about as you're starting to set up your course, and some things to check out in the program as well. And then finally, when we touch down at our destination, we'll talk about additional, where to go for additional help, and we'll also have a question and answer period. So if you have any questions for me, definitely feel free to share those at the end. All right, so that being said, let's jump into Achieve. So when your course is shared, when you get access to your course, you're going to get to a point when you log into your course, you're going to get to this screen. Okay, so you're going to get this welcome to Achieve. Let's start by getting your course set up. So before you really do anything, it's going to ask you, how do you want your course set up? Now, I'm going to get back to this in a minute because I'd like to show you some of the other functionality first. So the majority of what you're going to do is going to be inside this My Course tab on the left-hand side. This is the heart of your course, and this is where you and your students are going to do the most work. Down below is the Browse button. The Browse button is really for you looking for materials to add to your course. Okay. The third button down after that is the Gradebook function, and we'll talk a little bit about this near the end of the call, along with the Reports button. And then finally, you have ebook access. Okay, so your ebook access would be right here. Both you and the students have access to that button. Okay, so getting back to our major screen, you have this dialog box right here. let's get started by setting up your course. So right off the bat, you have two choices to face. Do you want to start with a pre-built course where everything is populated in your course that we have in our library, or do you want to make your course from scratch? So for what's going on right now, I strongly recommend let's start with that pre-built course. Let's populate your course with everything that we've got. So I'm going to click on Start with Pre-Built Course. And so you're going to get a warning screen that says this. We're going to load 47 pre-built units. That's going to contain 129 activities. So I'm going to acknowledge that's the way we want to do it. We want all these activities in our course. So I'm going to click on Acknowledge all activities will be added, and then hit Continue to Course Plan. Okay, and when that happens, all of those activities, now our course plan area has all the folders in it. That's kind of nice. So I chose our interactive general chemistry course. So all your course may be different and may be set up a little bit different than what you're seeing today. But what I'm going to do is go into one of the chapters. I'm going to go into chapter 6 for instance. And inside that chapter 6 folder, it looks like we've got 7 different activities. Within that folder, you're going to have at least a summative quiz or a homework assignment, and you're also going to have that learning curve activity. So let's talk about learning curve first. So what I did was just open that link up, and so now we're inside the learning curve activity. Now you and your students may find learning curve particularly helpful right now for a few reasons. Learning curve is a formative quizzing activity where questions are tagged to the different parts of the chapter, and students need to work their way through to hit the target activity score. Think of it like completing the level in a video game, but you're just reading through an actual chapter in your textbook. So that being said, let's see what this looks like from the student perspective. So what I'm going to do is click on our button over here that says Begin Preview as a Student. And then down below, we have this button down here that says Begin Activity. Okay, so here's our question. Now, in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see that the question value is set at 15 points, which seems to be the standard number of points per learning curve question, although they can get much, much higher. Now, you'll see the question, and it's a multiple choice question. If I try to answer this question incorrectly, okay, so I've gotten the question incorrect, I get a little bit of feedback, but look at what happened to that question value. It went from 15 points down to 5 points. So really, I never lost those points. I just can earn less points towards this target score of 450 points for this assignment. Okay, now if I get this question incorrect again, okay, now I can earn up to 2 points towards this 450. So you never lose points, you just can earn less points towards the target activity score. So it's always a formative step forward, albeit sometimes a small step like what we see here. Now that being said, if I don't know the question right off the bat, like I'm doing right now, the main strategy the system is going to use is to nudge the student to actually read the ebook page. So if you notice these 3 buttons at the bottom of the screen, we have this one button here that says read the ebook page in this topic. I'm going to click on that and the ebook is going to appear on the right-hand side. Now, what's really cool is that it's going to drop you off on the page where this is being discussed in the textbook, but 9 times out of 10, it's going to drop you off on the section of the page where this is being discussed. Okay, and you may know students are not penalized for opening the ebook page, and in fact, you may have seen research that shows that students' retention is up to 3 times higher when they're reading with a purpose or with a question in mind. So after finding the answer, they can go back and try to answer this question one more time. Oh, and I got it incorrect, so I'm not doing that good this morning. So now students like learning curve, because as long as they don't give up, they can work their way through it. So like me, now I've got 0 points, but I finally got the question correct. But I've earned 0 points towards that target score. So if I go down to the next question, okay, it's going to ask me another question from a different part of that chapter. So the system is adapted with the questions tagged by different sections and difficulty levels so that students cannot rely on knowledge from only one part of the chapter to carry them through the entire assignment. The system will eventually start pushing their way along, so that way they're exposed to the entire chapter. So what I'm going to do now is hit this button in the upper right-hand corner that says Back to Study Plan. So another reason that students like Learning Curve is that it gives them a personalized study plan based on how they did. It will direct them to the sections that they were weaker in and show them any additional resources or videos or anything that can help them overcome whatever deficiency that they have. Okay. So those are the reasons why Learning Curve tends to be really popular, especially with students. So now what I'm going to do is click the End Preview button over here. And so that way we go back to the instructor view. Now there's a few reasons, especially now, that you might find Learning Curve to be helpful. First, the students who complete the Learning Curve activities tend to show up to the lecture better prepared to engage, whether that's a face-to-face lecture, a virtual lecture, or even delivered in an asynchronous manner. Another helpful thing is that Learning Curve will help you take the temperature of your classroom, even though you don't have your normal classroom. So what I'm going to do to show you that, there's a button over here in the lower left-hand corner that says Show Some Sample Students. So let's say you've got a class of 5 students. 4 of them right now have completed the activity, okay? And you've got still 1 student working towards completing the target score. But on the right-hand side, this is where your class is as an aggregate. This is where their current learning state is. Now, what's kind of cool is that if we want to see where is Marie Curie struggling with, we can click on her name, and this gives us her current learning state. Where is she at in the learning process? So knowing how your class is doing as a whole, and knowing where individual students are needing a little bit more help, this is going to be extremely helpful when students are emailing you questions or if you're holding virtual office hours. So all that being said, Learning Curve is going to be your most thorough and easiest to assign activity out of the box in Achieve. Okay. So again, this is our adaptive system. The goal of Learning Curve is to get students to read and comprehend what they're reading. Okay. So you've got a Learning Curve activity. You'll also have some sort, oops, I went a little too far. Let me come back. Okay. So the other activity that you're going to have in each chapter, besides Learning Curve, is that you're going to have at least one homework assignment. So let's take a look at what that homework assignment looks like. So we're going to look at this from the instructor perspective. And so all the questions are going to be arranged as a table, and each line on the table represents a question. If it loads, let me see if I can force it to load again. There it goes. Okay, so like I said, each question is going to be represented as a line on the table. And the biggest column on this table, the one that doesn't have a title, have a label up here, this is called the title and description column. This is going to give you a really good sense of the question before you see it live yourself. Okay, so if I take a look at line number 3 here, the title and description reads, predict sign of W, use the coefficients of a reaction to predict the sign of delta N, and then the sign of W. Okay, so you have a pretty good sense of what this question is going to be looking at. Okay, now if I go one column over to the right, we get to see what level of Bloom's taxonomy this question falls into. So this is still a level 2 understanding question. Now, if I go two more columns over to the right this time, we get to see the question type. So this is going to be a multiple select question. So what's really nice about our system is that we not only have an idea of what this question is going to ask us, but it's also going to give us an indication of how students are going to answer this question. Now, if I go back back to the title and description column, and this time I'm going to go one column over to the left this time, we have a clickable image of this question. So what I'm going to do is click on that, and it's going to give us a pop-up screen of the actual question that's going live to students. Okay, and by default, we're looking at the solution for this question. Now, every question in the homework side of Sapling, in the homework side of Achieve, is going to have three things in common with each other. And to show you that, what I'm going to do is go over here to the upper right-hand corner and click on this toggle switch that says Show Feedback. So right off the bat, by clicking on Show Feedback, you actually get to see the first thing that each question is going to have. Each question will have a detailed solution to each and every question. And what's really cool is that our content team words these solutions from the point of view of, let's say you had absolutely no clue on how to even approach this question. By reading the solution, you're going to gain an appreciation of where this question is coming from. So that way, if a student is confronted with a similar question later on, whether that's inside a homework or a quiz or an exam, at least they're going to have a better chance of getting that question correct. Okay, so each question will have detailed feedback, and you as the instructor can choose when they see that solution, either after they complete the assignment or after they've completed that question. Okay, now what I'm going to do is go to left-hand side to the question view tab, and if I click on this, you get to see the question as it's presented to students, and you can try to answer it yourself. But on the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see that there's going to be at least one hint. Okay, and some systems will have penalties for opening the hints, or they may get some extra credit. Our system, the hint treats the hint as it's there for the students. There's no penalty to open up the hint. You don't have to open up the hint. But if you need some additional help, we've got you covered there. And then finally, over here on the left-hand side, we're going to skip over to the solution tab because we've seen that already. But if we go to the incorrect feedback, there's actually 4 different incorrect feedbacks programmed for this question. So you can see exactly what the feedback that students would get for this question. So those are the 3 things that each question inside Achieve is going to have in common with each other. That there's going to be at least one hint per question. There's going to be a detailed solution to each and every question. And then finally, there's going to be a detailed solution for each and every question. Okay, so you'll have the hint, the feedback, and the solution. So the next question is, where are these questions coming from? So if you remember, we populated this course with activities and assignments already. So these courses will come populated with those. Now, because time is of the essence, you can create an assignment from scratch, but since we want to get these assignments out to students right away, what I would strongly recommend is to use this assignment as a scaffold to build what you want for your homework assignment. So you'll notice in this assessment tab that there's 35 questions. We can actually add more questions if we go inside the question bank. So at the top center of the screen, you'll see a series of tabs. Let's click on the question bank tab. Okay, so you'll see the series, you'll have the textbooks that you can actually choose from, or the different folders or question banks to choose from. So we're working from the interactive general chemistry folder where there's 5,400 questions to choose from. So if I open up the interactive general chemistry folder, we can go down to the title or the chapter that we're working from. So in this case, we're looking at questions for chapter 6, and there's 216 questions in there. And there we go. Now everything is broken down into sections. And if I open up section 6.2, where the work question was coming from, you've got it's broken down into subtopics. So the main idea in this section is that the internal heat is equal to the heat plus, or internal energy is equal to heat plus work. Okay. Now, if I take a look at this, let's say I want to take a look and find some more questions using the first law. What I can do is go over here to the right-hand side of the screen and actually take a look at all the questions that I have to choose from. So let's take a look at this particular question. I'm going to click on the image of the question so that way we can see what that question looks like. Okay. And then we can also go down below. And just like we did previously, we can go see the hint, the feedback, and that solution. Okay. Now, if this is an appropriate question that you'd like to ask your students, the way you would add it into your assignment is to click on the check mark box next to that question. And now you'll see that there's a menu that appears. It tells you that you've got one question selected. What I'm going to do is click Add. Okay, and then it's going to tell you it's added. one item has been added, and that number for the assessment went from 35 to 36. Now, if I go back to that assessment screen, and down at the bottom of the assignment, question 36 is that question that we just added to the assignment. So there it is. Now, this time around, I'm going to click on the check mark box of this question, and you'll notice we get another pop-up menu. Instead of having the add button, you can actually remove that question. Okay. You can also reorder the questions. So if you wanted to move this question higher up on the assignment instead of being at the end, you absolutely can. The other function that you have is that you can pool questions together. So let's say that there were, if you remember, there were 17 questions that were similar to the one that we chose. We could actually create a pool of those questions and then tell the system, I want 3 of these questions given to each student. And the system will randomly assign those 3 questions to each student. That is going to be particularly useful when you want to create a quiz or an exam, and you want to make sure that students are getting different questions, or you want to make sure that there's different versions of a quiz or an exam. Okay, so what I'm going to do, let's click on the remove button. So let's say this question doesn't work for us anymore. Let's remove it. You're going to get a warning screen that looks like this. Once the assignment's been started, students' grades will be affected by this change. Any attempts on the removed item will be deleted. Are you sure you want to modify? So what I'm going to do is go ahead and say remove item. And by removing that question, okay, so the number went from 36 down to 35. If I go back to the question bank, that question should still be here. And there it is. So this is really important. When you remove a question from an assessment, you only remove it from the assessment, and it's still here in the question bank. So that's really nice to know. You can't hurt the question banks. Okay, so what we're doing, picking out the questions and making sure that we've got the questions in the right order, this is the first step of a 3-step process in order to get an assignment live to students. So we're picking out the questions and making sure that we're happy with this assignment. Let's say, yeah, we're good with this. The second step is to choose the grading settings for this particular assignment. So what we're going to do, up in the upper right-hand corner, you'll notice a button that says grading settings that I'm hovering over right now. And now you actually can choose the grading settings. Now, everything in Achieve is going to use a standard homework template, which means that students will have unlimited attempts. They'll have a 5% penalty per wrong attempt. They'll see the solution upon question completion, and then they'll see resources like the ebook, data sets, hints like that. Now, if you don't like this policy, you can also create your own custom template. So if you want to create your own policy, you would give this a special name and then choose the settings that you want. And what's really cool is that once you make your own custom template, they stay in your account for as long as you want. So you'll notice these are actually 3 different policies that I've used. And this Zabricki exam is actually one that I'm using this semester under these circumstances. Okay, so this is also something to point out that we do have a test quiz policy, and yes, you can create your own custom template, your own custom exam policy. So that's really nice too. So if you were making a quiz or exam, you want to make sure you're using the test quiz function or create your own exam policy. So this would be your second. This is your second step. Make sure that you choose the grading policy for this particular assignment. Now, the third step is to get the assignment live to students. And you'll notice in the upper right-hand corner, there's a blue button that says Assign Activity. So let's click on that button. So here in the Assign Activity screen, now you've got 3 things to take a look at. The first is to choose student access. So right now, this assignment is private and hidden to students. Let's say we want to make this assignment. So if I click on Assign to Students, what we can do is assign this to everybody, and now we choose the due date and the due time. So let's make this due tomorrow at 11:59 p.m., and then we can also choose how many points possible we want to make this assignment worth. Now, because there were 35 questions, I'm going to make this out of 35 points. Okay. Now you've got a choice on student visibility. So right now you can make this visible to students for the entirety of the course, or you can make this show up 7 days before the due date, or you can actually manually choose when you want this assignment to be worth. Since this is homework, I want them to see this for the entire course. So I'm going to choose that. Now, if you do need to give a student exception, like for instance, if you got a student that's been identified by the Office of Accessibility and you need to give a time and a half or double time on an assignment, or you got to give an extension, you would click on this button here that says create student exception. So right in the assignment screen, you can actually do that. The other choice that you have is reporting organization. So if you were going to classify assignments and exams in your gradebook, if you wanted to set it as, state that this is an assignment or this is an exam or this is a learning curve activity, you can actually create categories in your gradebook. Okay. So I'm going to leave this alone. The other thing you can also specify is that you can classify assignments as to pre-class, in-class, or post-class. So I'm going to leave, or none. So I'm going to leave these categories alone. Finally, down below, assignment settings. If you happen to forget that second step by choosing the grading policy for that particular assignment, you could still do that here. Okay. But again, I would recommend after you choose the questions, make sure you choose the grading policy before you come to the screen. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is in the upper right-hand corner, click on Save Changes. And so what that does is gets our assignment live to students. So you'll notice that the due date is over here in the upper right-hand corner. And if we go back to the home screen, if I keep hitting that back arrow, it should load. Okay. And then I'm going to hit one more time. So that way we're back in our course. And now you'll see it in the assignments tab, which is, by the way, the first screen that students will see when they enter your course. They see they've got a homework due and it's due tomorrow at 11:59 p.m. Okay. And if we go back to the course plan page, it actually if we go back into the chapter 6 folder, you can see, yep, you've got an assignment due tomorrow at 11:59 and it's open to students. And this percentage right here, this is the percentage of your student who has your class that has completed the assignment, which can be useful if you need to get your students to do the assignment. Okay, so yeah, those are 2 activities that are out of the box that are ready to go that you can assign today to your students. Very cool. All right, so now we're going to start our initial descent. So the next question is, how can you make a quiz or an exam inside Achieve? The easiest answer is that we have actually done this already. So what we've done in making our homework assignment and choosing the questions and choosing the grading policy and the settings and all that, that's exactly what we're going to do. Excuse me. That's exactly what we're going to do in order to create an assignment or in order to create an exam. The only difference is we're going to have to click on this button on the left-hand side that says create content. And so when we click on that button, it's going to ask us, do we want to build an activity? Now, by default, this button is going to be chosen. So all we have to do is click on the assessment screen. By clicking on that button, we're going to have to give this assignment a name. And then we're also going to have to specify, what assignment type is this? Is this a test quiz, homework, unpenalized? Which is, by the way, this is tied into the grading policies. So what I'm going to do is choose that this is a test quiz, and let's call this exam 2. Okay, so what I'm going to do is hit the save button. What that does is takes us right back to the assessment screen, and it's going to ask us, we need to put some questions in this. Do you want to make your own? Or do you want to go through the question bank? And then you would choose question bank and then walk through the entire process that we just did with that homework assignment. Choose the questions, get it in the order that you want the questions to be asked. Step 2, choose the grading policy for that assignment. And then step 3, make the assignment go live to students. Choose how many points you want the assignment to be worth and all that good stuff. So writing an exam or a quiz inside the Achieve system is very straightforward, just like getting an assignment live. Okay. The only deal is after you've done that, you want to add your assignment to the course. So right now we're under the My Content area, and we've got exam 2 up right on the top. what I'm going to do is click on this button that says add to course. And then you can see it's been added to your course. So if we go back to the My Course tab and go back to course plan, there it is right on top. And by default, it's hidden for the entirety of the course. We have to go in and assign it, and that's when we click on that calendar. It takes us to our assign screen, and we're good to go. So getting an exam or quiz live to students is a very easy way to. It's very easy inside the Achieve system. All you have to do is follow the same protocol that we just did to getting a homework assignment live. So yeah, that's really cool. So here's the other thing though. Your department or your college or your university may be saying that you have to use a lockdown browser like Respondus. So what happens if your college or your university is saying that to you? Unfortunately, you can't use Achieve to do this, but we do have a workaround for you. You could access the Macmillan Learning Test Bank directly from the catalog page. You could create your exam using the test bank questions, and then what you would do is export your exam. Usually it's a zip file, and then you would upload that into your campus's LMS software. Okay, so if you do have to use a lockdown browser like Respondus, or you have to do quizzes and exams within your LMS, absolutely you can do that. Okay. So that being said, it's time to put up our trays and put our chairs in an upright lock position. So some last things to take a look at and think about with Achieve. First off, let's take a look at the gradebook because we haven't talked about this. So right now you do have, there are no students, but you can see that that chapter 6 homework is assigned. Now, if you do need to export your grades from Achieve into an Excel spreadsheet, you can absolutely do that. In the upper right-hand corner on the gradebook page, you do have a sync and export function, and you can choose to export your gradebook. Okay, and so it's going to choose. You're going to choose what categories, or you could choose to include all your categories. You can choose your student ID. It will export as a CSV file, which you can read in Excel. So absolutely, you can export your grades from Achieve into Excel. The other thing I really want to check out is the reports function. Now we can spend a whole lot more time on reports, but what's really cool is that you can get information about how your students are doing on the assignments. You can also get information on how your students are doing on the learning objectives in for our particular textbooks. So you can get a whole lot of information on your students from this reports page. Okay, so once you get an assignment live and once you've got students in your course and they're doing work, definitely check out this reports area because this will give you a lot of detailed information about your students. Finally, if you're going through the browse area, we haven't really talked about this one. What I'm going to do is go back to content library, and you'll notice that you've got the table of contents here. So if you're looking for any resources like instructor resources, notes, lecture slides, in-class activities, anything like that, check out the resources area here. This is going to have a whole lot of information available to you. Okay, so definitely check this out. If you're looking for pre-class or post-class material, definitely recommend to check that out. All right, so all that being said, it's time to start, it's time to touch down. So we'd like to talk, it's time for the questions and answers. But before we do that, what about finding some additional help? So after today's email, after today's session, what's gonna happen is that you're gonna get a follow-up email from us with a copy of this recording. So if you need some help walking through exams or making an exam or making an assignment, you got that. You'll also have a link to contact your representative if you still need to set up access to Achieve. You'll also get a link to sign up for a personalized session with a discipline specialist. And then you'll also get some additional support materials, as well as a link to our support knowledge base. A lot of the basic questions that you could have about Achieve is going to be answered within our documentation in the knowledge base. So I strongly recommend, if you have a question, this is like the perfect place to start looking. Okay. And that being said, I want to open it up to some questions and answers. So if you feel if you like to chat or ask a question, feel free to type your question into the chat area.
Because of the nature of this, thank you, Jim. This is Scott Guile from Macmillan. Great job. Because of the nature of a presentation like this, the attendees are on mute. So you will need to type any questions that you have into either chat or the questions link, excuse me, place on the right-hand side. It's right where the orange arrow is. I will send a chat right now so that people see where that comes from. And we'll wait a minute to see if we have anything come in. I think we are good, Jim.
Okay,
We'll send
sounds
this
good.
recording out. Along with the recording, we will send the deck. Is the deck going, Jim, or just the recording?
Yeah, you can send the deck. That's totally okay.
Okay. So thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Stay safe. Have a wonderful weekend. Thank you, Jim. And we'll be doing events like this periodically over the next few weeks. Have a great day and weekend.